So very good afternoon, myself Dr. Sandeep Tripathi. In today's exclusive interview program, I'm very delighted to have a very leading voice across the country, Professor Chetan Singh Solanki, with today's FGS exclusive program. So let me introduce about Professor Solanki. He's a professor at Indian Institute of Technology, IIT Bombay. And as I said that he's a leading authority on solar energy. So, just about his remarkable contribution across the country for the subject of solar energy. So Times of India referred him as a solar man of India. So dear sir, we are very privileged to have you here for today's our exclusive interview program. And Professor Solanki is also the founder at Energy Suraj Foundation. For that, I hope that, and I know that he visited across the country for solar energy awareness. And also, it's a very prevalent movement that Professor Solanki has been referred as a brand ambassador of solar energy by the Madhya Pradesh government. So dear sir, we are so delighted and so privileged to have today with you. So I welcome you on behalf of the Forum for Global Studies in today's session. And now I would like to Now I'd like to hand over this session, Mr. John McLean-Gill, who is today's moderator for the session. So thank you so much, Professor Solanki, and thank you so much, Mr. John. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Tripathi, for that. And once again, Professor Solanki, it is a true honor for us to have you here to start the program of 2022 with a renowned figure such as yourself, sir. So thank you again. And today's discussion would be very important, considering that we would evaluate and critique and look into the current dynamics of India's energy security dimension, and of course, looking at it from a domestic and international point of view. Now, we could start the question, sir, with this particular point. Now, India seemed to be on a path to ramping up its renewable energy capacity. They hit a target to install at least 175 gigawatts of renewable energy capacity by 2022, this year. However, due to the much needed economic recovery process due to the COVID-19 pandemic, the process was seen to slow down. Now, sir, would this particular goal of 2022 still be attainable? And in addition to that, India's overall mega goal of achieving 450 gigawatts by 2030. Now, what's the feasibility of these points, sir?
All right. Once again, thank you, both of you. It is my pleasure to be here with you and talking about the topic which is very dear to me, the solar energy. There may be some things like this pandemic which may slow down things or affect it. Sometimes the particular technological development also accelerate than what was planned. So both these dynamics will, I think, keep going on all the time. But I believe that even if we are short of certain target by 2022, the overall target of 450 gigawatt by 2030 is definitely achievable. And whatever leadership that we have shown, what are the plans and acceleration of solar energy installations that we have seen by the central government and by many state governments, I think put together, it is definitely possible to achieve these goals.
Thank you so much, sir. And on that positive note, we could look forward to achieving a number of variety of ambitions with regards to having a very efficient and capable energy security paradigm in the country. Now, particularly last year, by the end of last year in Glasgow, India announced its goal to be a carbon neutral economy by 2070. Now, sir, how realistic and achievable is this goal, given that India is the second largest consumer of coal, and in 2020 alone, 70% of its electricity was generated through coal?
Well, that's a very interesting question, and pardon me for a long answer that I'm going to give. First of all, it's not only India, but in general, across the world, I believe that in the context of the climate change, we need to really rethink and redesign our energy systems. So it is not merely sufficient that we keep growing our energy demand and find out X technology, Y technology, Z technology, and figure out how to fulfill the demand. The basic premises, I believe, which the whole world is missing, is that there are certain fundamentals that we need to follow. You know, if at all as a human race we want to survive on this planet, there are fundamentals that you have to follow. You know, and one of the most important fundamental is that the entire planet is a fixed ecosystem, isn't it? The size of the planet is fixed, the amount of water is fixed, the air is fixed, soil is fixed, all the minerals are fixed. And therefore, we are an ecosystem of finite resources. There has to be finite consumption. And everywhere in the world, we keep talking about more production, more consumption, figure out this technology, that technology, but we are missing out the most important parameter is limit our consumptions. And therefore, when we think from this perspective, my question is, and again, I'm saying it is not India specific, but to every country, whatever generation of energy that we are doing, is it really required? Is it going to be really useful? I mean, even solar energy, for example, 20 years down the line, 30 years down the line, the disposal of solar panel will become another issue, and then it is going to take more energy and then more chemicals and more environmental impact. So solar energy is much better as compared to coal energy. However, still it does not have a zero carbon footprint. It does have a finite carbon footprint. And therefore, my fundamental objection to all these parameters, which is trying to only focus on growth of energy generation, is itself a question that we should worry about. Now, having said that, the second dimension of the problem is that energy and climate change are directly correlated. And because our energy demands are still growing, all over the world, it has to still grow. There's a still significant population in the world which does not have fully access to energy or sufficient access to energy. And therefore, the question is, can we afford to grow further energy demand? Because on the one side, we want to grow energy requirement. On the other side, we need to decrease our energy consumption because of the climate change impact. And as you rightly said, 70% of electricity in India still comes from the coal. Now, so this is the dilemma, again, not for the country like India, but I believe this is the dilemma for the whole world. How do we do this? Shall I increase my energy consumption and propel the growth? Shall I decrease my energy consumption and mitigate the climate change? I think this is the broader picture under which our energy systems are to be redesigned and rethought. And therefore, so from this perspective, 2070 for India to become to carbon neutral is too late, really too late. We don't have time, and you know that the climate clock is ticking. The global temperatures are already 1.1 degrees centigrade warmer, and we need to do everything possible to limit it 1.5 degrees centigrade. And as per the current carbon emission, we hardly have 8-10 years before we have to cut down our carbon emission to zero, if at all we want to limit global temperature to 1.5 degrees centigrade, or maybe 30 years time when we allow the global temperature rise to 2 degrees centigrade. So that's another problem, that we do not have time because climate change itself is accelerating, and therefore we need to accelerate our energy efforts also. And in this context, only thinking about generation of energy and becoming carbon neutral by 2050, 60, 70 is really not a good idea. And I'm repeating again, this is for the entire world I'm talking about. So therefore, my proposition for any energy solution is following. I call it AMG rule. What countries, what industries, what individual, what families should follow today is follow this AMG rule. A means avoid the use of energy as much as possible, even if it is solar energy. So I'm a professor of solar energy. I have written many books and published many papers, and I'm brand ambassador for government. But still my first rule is avoid use of solar energy also, because it does not have a zero carbon footprint. So avoid it. And when I move across the country and across the world, we see that, I particularly see that there is so much of wastage of energy. We use energy where it is not required. We overuse energy where less can also be okay. We misuse energy when we can avoid it. We inefficiently use energy, which is avoidable. So first and foremost, because the planet itself is a constant, all resources are constant, limit your consumption. And one of the simplest way up to limit your consumption is avoid the misuse, overuse, and inefficient use of energy. M is minimize the use of energy. If you cannot avoid it in the night time, you have to use it. The next thing is minimize the use of energy. Excuse me. So minimize the use of energy. How do we minimize it? By using efficient appliances. So there are very efficient appliances available, like LEDs are very efficient. There are BLDC fans as compared to induction motor fans. The refrigerators are available in 5-star ratings. The air conditioners are available in 5-star rating. There are many DC appliances available. They are so efficient that you can actually bring down your energy consumption by 20-30% easily. So minimize it. And if you cannot avoid, minimize it. If you cannot minimize beyond certain point, then you should think of generation as a last option. And I call it 1/3, 1/3, 1/3 rule. 1/3 you avoid, 1/3 you minimize. Generate only 1/3 energy. If everybody goes by this idea, then I think whatever electricity that is being generated in India itself is sufficient right now. Because you can avoid by 30%, you can minimize by 30%. So there is a big potential of at least 40% reduction in our consumption today. And if we really do that, the government of India will benefit in many ways. We don't have to import so much of energy. We are energy dependent, import dependent. We will also reduce the impact on the climate change. If we decentralize our solution, then we're also going to create a lot of jobs and all. So therefore, the advantage of following this AMG rule and reducing your energy consumption, not to India, but every other country, Africa, Europe, US, is enormous. And therefore, if we follow this, we can bring down this 2070 timeline for becoming carbon neutral much, much earlier, which I think very much required if at all we want to limit global warming below 1.5 or maximum 2 degrees centigrade.
Thank you so much, Professor, for actually providing a grassroots level analysis and, of course, a proposition that really relies on pragmatism in order to achieve an efficient outcome with energy sufficiency. You have rightfully said, sir, that India, being currently dependent on energy resources with its imports, has the potential to minimize its dependency and, of course, to enhance and maximize whatever it has right now to achieve what it wants in the long term. And I believe this should be considered as a benchmark for the rest of the world, as you have mentioned, and the benefits that not only India and its people, but the rest of the world can attain from this is monumental and a very good point indeed, sir. Now, switching to to natural gas, a very interesting topic that many would like to know about, sir. The government's ambition to make India a cleaner gas-based economy. The question really revolves around that. Now, this is a particularly important development. However, the percentage of natural gas in the power mix remains quite low. Now, what are the key challenges for India to become a gas-based economy, an efficient gas-based economy?
Well, I mean, it is always good to switch to more cleaner processes uh, uh, than the and of course ultimately the cleanest process. So gas is definitely cleaner, but nevertheless it is made out of carbon. So ultimately there is going to be a carbon emission. Now, for many reasons, it is good for the country to uh, increase its share of the gas-based electricity generation as much as possible. However, as you rightly mentioned, that our current percentage is only about 6-7%. I think the government of India has been putting a lot of efforts in ensuring the security of the supply, but it always depends on the so many other parameters and external forces. Uh, I think in the time to come it will catch up. But as I said earlier, the focus of the government on renewable is actually much more, and I would believe that the renewable energy contribution will catch up or probably grow faster than the contribution of the gas-based generation in the time to come. So yes, I mean, it is little cleaner than the coal, but it is really not the clean, because ultimately it's a carbon source, and it would be great if we can push renewable energy more and more, while intermediate level securing the sources for the gas supply.
Thank you, Professor. And on that note, on renewable energy in particular, this leads to my next question. Particularly, how much of a challenge would it be for India to effectively integrate intermittent renewable energy capacity into its transmission grids currently?
Well, again, my answer would be a little longer in the sense that when we are trying to solve very big problems, when we are trying to solve the problem of energy security of the country, when we are trying to solve the problem of the climate change, which is not a problem of just one country, it is a global problem. And if such a case, then tweaking of the existing solution, in my view, is not going to help. And unfortunately, again, the whole world is just trying to tweak the solution. Can we add more gas? Can we add more renewable? How do we take care of the intermittency? These are all issues because we are still thinking in a business as usual scenario. And the business as usual scenario is that what we should do, or what countries are supposed to do, is install big power plants, ensure a 24/7 supply to all the people. Once you install big power plant, of course, you have to have a big transmission network, big distribution network, ensure that the networks are maintained well. Also, you can create kind of green corridors and have a spatial power evacuation and all. This, I believe, is not going to be the solution to the problem, because it is going to be too slow. It is already, the skeleton is so rigid, and it is already there in place, and you can't bring a major changes. And as a professor, this is where we can actually put a cross question and analyze ourselves. As I said, we need to rethink and redesign our energy systems and solutions. So today, when we have the advancement of solar energy technology, why we are still thinking in the same age-old manner of centralizing solutions and putting big power plants and transmission and distribution? We had to do this because we can't supply. I keep jokingly with my student. Earlier, we couldn't supply nuclear fuel to every house and ask them to have your own nuclear power plant. We couldn't do that, isn't it? We can't supply to coal to every house and say, okay, have your own coal power plant. Neither river goes to every house, and therefore we can't have a hydropower plant. So therefore, it was our compulsion of the past that we put up a centralized power plant. But today, when solar energy is so advanced and it is efficient and also cost effective, I did my PhD on solar energy technology. Why can't we change the entire paradigm? Why can't I generate my own electricity and fulfill my own energy needs? I have my own car, I have my own house, I have my own refrigerator, my own sofa. Let there be my own energy supply system. And today's technology allows us to do that. So when we start thinking of decentralizing solution, when we start thinking that how can I be independent of the grid, how small communities can be independent of the grid, how our industry can be independent of the grid, I think the whole game changes, upside down, isn't it? We don't have the same game. We don't have to have, distribution, infrastructure, this, that. And the whole question of intermittency is kind of disappeared, not completely, but to a great extent. So today, if I go by earlier principle I mentioned, AMG, avoid, minimize, and generate. If I follow this, my energy needs will become very less. So I will avoid the misuse and I will use very efficient appliances. My energy needs are going to be very less. Average middle class can actually do all its run the entire house, maybe 100, 150 units following this. When it is only 100, 150 units for average middle class, what you need is a 1 kilowatt system, maybe 2 kilowatt system, or maybe 3-4 kilowatt hour of storage. And you can have your own storage. And therefore you make grid free of that burden, that you make yourself independent, that you make country free, and your local storage is going to take care of the intermittency. So I think we need to turn the table and ask and redesign our energy systems. And today's technological evolution allows us to do that. Now, it may not fit to everyone. Industry may actually have its own way of generating and fulfilling. Hydrogen can be a big, high energy carrier. You can use it. Some setup we can have the centralized solution, but I think every government, every society will benefit if we start decentralizing the solution. And Africa, for example, where 50% electrification is yet to be done. This is the blessing in disguise. You've not invested your time, you've not invested your resources in putting all kind of complicated infrastructure in terms of the grid and centralized power plant. In less than half of the money, you can actually decentralize the solution, which will also have additional benefit. Not only that you become energy independent and the governments become free of all this burden, but because you're going to generate power locally, we also need a skillful people. And those people are going to install and maintain. So they will also get job. And when local people will get job, the money will circulate in the local economy. Then it will also strengthen the rural economy, the local economy. And of course, when you are going to solar energy completely, you are also contributing in mitigating climate change. So I think when we turn the table completely upside down, and you see that the big problem can be solved, the climate change, the energy security, but together with this solutions, we also benefit in terms of job creation, in terms of local economy, in terms of energy independence, probably women empowerment, etc. So I think there are tremendous benefit, but you have to go beyond the normal ways of generation and supply and re-look and rethink about our generation and consumption.
Thank you so much, Professor. Rightfully said and wonderfully explained as well. The need to recalibrate our mindset from the grassroots to the policy level at the top towards something beyond the traditional, beyond what we could call the mainstream, to sort of tap into a progressive policy to be able to achieve not only a significant degree of energy security, but as you have mentioned, to be able to maximize other forms of development, be it women empowerment, climate for climate change and all that. So really the need that you have rightfully emphasized, sir, to go beyond what we consider to be as the norm would be extremely beneficial to be able to tackle and to maximize our potential, India's potential towards having a significant degree of energy security. Thank you so much for that, sir. Now, this goes to the last question, perhaps a summary of what we have discussed here today. Now, according to the International Energy Agency, now electricity demand in India is expected to grow by 5% per year. Now, to sum it all up, sir, how does India intend to craft a future power mix? How does India intend to balance its interests with its requirements and needs?
Sorry, I last couple of sentences I could not hear. If you can
Oh,
repeat.
sorry. So basically, how does India intend to craft its future power mix?
Well, I think the kind of perspective that I have presented, in which I strongly believe is the case, that it is just not enough for any country to keep growing production of any resource, and because Earth is an ecosystem of finite resources, we have to limit our consumption. Also, we are not only tackling about energy security and energy supply, but climate change is really becoming a serious concern for everyone, and directly or indirectly we are also paying for it. Climate change is also something which cannot be just tackled within a days and months and years, right? It is going to be a long-term strategy, and therefore I believe that the policymakers in India should think, and elsewhere in the world also, rather than increasing the demand of or electricity need by 5%, what are the ways, what are the low-hanging fruits in which I can avoid the misuse, overuse, and inefficient use of energy? And believe me, there is a lot of it, and I see everywhere, because I'm very sensitive to where the wastage is, and I can see that everywhere it is taking place, and 20-30% reduction in overall energy consumption without affecting the economic performance, economic growth of the country is very much doable and possible. And these are actually the low-hanging fruits, really the low-hanging fruits. So therefore, I would again turn the question in a manner that why do we need a 5% growth? Why can't I fulfill all my current economic activities within the same energy supply system and using energy more efficiently? How can I do that? Why can't I do that? And I think once we throw a challenge to ourselves, something like that, I'm sure there are solutions already exist that India can deploy and be even beneficial about it, and get a benefit of reducing our foreign exchange, reducing import, so that we can also save the foreign exchange. So my strong recommendation everywhere, every time is reduce your consumption, limit your consumption. The increase in the generation is not always the right thing to do. The climate change has told us very clearly that yes, it is indeed not right thing to do.
Thank you so much, sir. And of course, for ending in such a positive and optimistic note, that this is indeed a challenge we can give to everyone, not only in India, but the rest of the world, to take up the challenge for something good, for something positive, and for something effective in the long term. Now, on that note, Professor Solanki, on behalf of the Forum for Global Studies, we deeply thank you, sir, for taking your time to be with us here today and to discuss such an interesting and very critical topic for the development of not only India, but the rest of the world. And to that, sir, thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Don, and thank you, Dr. Tripathi. Thank you very much for having me on your program, and I hope I have added some insights into it, and hopefully it will be useful for people, not only in India, but across the world, to follow these steps. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.